Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, to a new video in the miniatures section of how to play certain openings. As you've noticed, I'm focusing on the Djerba Masters round robin, really strong tournament that finished a few days ago. This is the third game. There are a total of 4, and we're featuring with white pieces again Grandmaster Daniel Dardha from Belgium, rated 2652, very strong young player. And with black, again, we're featuring GM Maghsoodloo from Iran, the tough Irani 2680 player. Someone mentioned in the comments that Dardha might be Armenian. I know he's from Belgium, and he's been from Belgium many years, but maybe there's some ancestry with the Dardha surname. No idea. I'll try and check that out because that'd be interesting. Because of course Belgium doesn't have such a strong chess tradition. I could even hardly remember any grandmaster from Belgium. But Armenia, I mean, that's a different thing now. A huge amount of very good players from Armenia. Okay, let's get with the game. By the way, and I hope by now you are subscribed. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscription button because we're growing. We've already crossed 750, which I'm really happy about. That means there's interest in the games and in this channel. But it would be fantastic to get to 1,000 and open up these live streams, be able to connect with you guys, maybe play some games. That would be cool. So hit the subscription button and let's try and get to 1,000 as soon as possible. Okay, so Daniel opens with e4. c5, knight f3, e6, d4, c takes d, knight takes d, knight to c6, the Taimanov variation of the Sicilian. Now I have noticed in the last 3 or 4 years with the growing strength of computers, a lot of players are choosing offbeat lines, trying to catch their opponent, either in something they don't know about, or at least something that they might know about, but they haven't specialized. And in this game, Daniel is able to achieve this objective. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that they're trying to get an opening advantage. Most of the time, the position will be equal. However, if Daniel has spent enough time on the position with white, he would be able to play faster and with more knowledge of where to put the pieces. And that's the main benefit that you get when you surprise your opponent in an offbeat line. You're not necessarily going to get an advantage, but maybe you'll get the advantage on the clock, which is also a certain advantage. Bishop to f4. This has never been played at a high level. At least I couldn't find top level games. The idea is well known. You prevent queen to c7, which is a typical Taimanov move, and sometimes knight to b5 could be an idea, hitting the d6 square. For example, if black plays a6, which is the move I would play with black here, then I think Daniel would go for knight takes knight, knight to d2, and queen to f3. And this doesn't give white an advantage, but it's a fresh position, and maybe if Daniel has spent enough time on this position, he knows how to play fast and quickly. Alternatively, d6 would be natural, but then we could possibly play bishop to b5, exchange, and with a similar sort of position with these ideas. Again, not enough for an advantage, but it does take black out of his comfort zone. This is actually more like certain variations of the Tarrasch French defense than the Sicilian. So Maghsoodloo played queen to f6. This would be considered the refutation of the line. By the way, notice that e5, pinning the 2 pieces, is bad because of knight takes c6, and then you just pick up the pawn. Also notice that queen to a5 check, which seems to be good, just fails to bishop to c3. So these are some of the tricks and traps specific to this line. Queen to f6 is an interesting idea, hitting the 2 pieces, and also forcing black to drop back. Bishop to e3. Bishop to c5, c3. The main drawback of queen to f6 is that the knight can no longer come here. Knight g to e7. Now, when I saw this position, it immediately reminded me of another position from a totally different opening. And I'm going to show you this now. Let's go back to the first move, e4. Now, if black plays e5, which is open game, and white goes for the Scotch opening, we have a very similar position. This is mainstream theory. You can check this out if you want. Now, compare this position here with this position here. It's practically the same, with the difference of the c pawn, which is on e6 instead of c7. A big difference, for sure. But it just goes to show how Dardha is able to get Parham out of his comfort zone on the Sicilian. Having said that, black is completely fine. And one of the advantages of having the pawn on e6 instead of c7 is that he's able to play d5 in one shot. And now if white plays pawn takes pawn, this will be an isolated queen's pawn, but with a fantastic development and the bishop coming out very fast. I mean, black has no trouble at all. It's white that could be in danger with this knight here on b1 without development. So Daniel plays knight takes c6, swaps up off a couple of pieces, and gets the knight to d2. Maybe black could have considered here knight takes knight, but the problem is after pawn takes pawn, you can't recapture because of the pin. So maybe it's not so good. So pawn takes, knight to d2. Now Maghsoodloo plays a very good move, a5, a standard tabaya, a standard pattern, exchanging off the bishop, the c8 bishop from the f1 bishop. And here Dardha plays like alpha 0, launching the h-pawn, trying to take advantage that the bishops will be swapped. The rook is certainly misplaced here, and we haven't lost the tempo playing our bishop first. And the pawn continues to advance. Black blocks it, and now knight to b3, hitting the c5 square. I think white is certainly very slightly better here, and the computer agrees. However, black does have a strong center, and it's just one move away of finishing development. So he shouldn't be too bad here. And I think with precise play, he should keep the equality. But then again, white is pressing. Here, for example, the computer suggests queen to g5, which I think is reasonable, trying to exchange queens. Of course, probably Maghsoodloo will not exchange queens and play f4, hitting the queen and preventing the exchange. And I think that after queen g4 or queen takes g2, the position is very complicated. Maybe Maghsoodloo didn't like the idea of playing this position here. This is just a suspicion, but it's very difficult to know. It's a double pawn sacrifice, and yeah, who knows what's happening here? Who knows what's happening here? It's very double-edged. In any case, he didn't play that, and he played e5, which is very ambitious, grasping the center, very ambitious, and maybe threatening queen to g5. Knight to c5 hits the rook, rook to a7, and now an excellent move, knight to d3, hitting the rook, but also threatening pawn takes pawn and queen takes e5. So black is already in trouble, and he had to find an only move here, which was rook to d7, with the idea that after pawn takes pawn, knight to f5, the intermediate move, and we can't capture the pawn because of rook to e7 winning the queen. I wonder if Maghsoodloo spotted the move but didn't think that he'd be okay in this position with his broken pawns. The computer says he's fine, but of course he would need to understand that during the game, and that's not so easy. Instead of that, he played knight to c8. I don't like this move. Right, it is true that he's bringing the rook over, but the knight is badly placed on c8. But of course, with hindsight, it's easy to spot the mistakes. During the game, it's not so easy. Pawn takes pawn, and of course, he had spotted that if white captures on e5, rook to e7 wins the queen. that was clearly seen by Parham. He'd also seen that if knight takes e5, we pin the knight, and then after queen to e6, threatening f6, black has a very good position. It's going to be difficult for white to hold his material advantage after f6. But maybe he didn't see, or he misevaluated, queen to c5, a very strong move. Hitting the knight, keeping the pressure on the other parts of the board, and again preventing black from castling. Knight to b6 was the only move, and after long castle, white was already quite better, but Maghsoodloo blundered with queen to e6, protecting the knight. Castle with the threat knight takes e5 and rook to e1. He's already in big trouble here. Maybe the best move was rook to e7, rook to e1, threatening rook takes pawn, and after e4, white plays knight to f4, winning a pawn because of the double threat. This was probably his best option, so that already goes to show that his position is very bad. But he played king to d8, which is just losing. He's trying to get in rook to c7, but there's no time. Rook a to d1, and now rook to c7 would be contested by queen to a5, just winning a pawn. And queen to d6 to exchange queens would be contested by queen takes and knight takes, winning 2 pawns. So under grave danger, Maghsoodloo played f6, just trying to defend, and now Daniel did the killer move, knight takes e5, which forced Maghsoodloo to resign the game prematurely, but without doubt in a losing position. The threat is knight to c6, so the knight has to be captured, and if it's captured by the queen, rook takes d5 wins the queen, and if it's captured by the pawn, rook takes d5, rook to d7, rook to d1, threatening rook takes rook, knight to b6, and rook takes d6 wins the knight and wins the game. A very powerful performance here in the 4th round by Daniel Dardha, who went on to do a very, very strong tournament. And we've learned a new offbeat line, this bishop to f4. Not to be necessarily played by you guys, because it doesn't objectively offer an advantage, but it goes to show that if you take your opponent out of the comfort zone, you might get a fresh position. And if you've worked hard on that position before, you can even take down a guy so strong as Parham Maghsoodloo. There's one more game to go of the Djerba Masters, which you'll see in the next video, played by the winner, Marc-André Maurizzi. So if you're French, you'll enjoy seeing one of your compatriots' game. And for the rest of you, I hope you enjoyed this bout, this performance by Dardha. Hit the subscribe button, thumbs up, leave me a comment if you want, what you thought about the game, and see you all in the next video. Have fun and keep improving and enjoying the game.